All right, so check this out. The year is 1862. The setting is Hardin County, Tennessee, and our nation is neck deep in one of the most tragic 4-year periods of our history, the American Civil War. And before dawn on April 6th, 2 weeks before Easter Sunday, the Union forces and the Confederate Army clash on the west bank of the Tennessee River in what would quickly become the bloodiest conflict our country had ever witnessed, the Battle of Shiloh. Two armies, composed of men born in the same land, raised on farms and street corners, separated by only state lines, killing each other, destroying lives and families with every gunshot and every thrust of a bayonet. Now, historians suggest that neither side was fully prepared to deal with the catastrophic results of this battle. Men were left to die, bleeding out on the battlefield, medical teams were understaffed by astounding margins, and finally, when the fighting ceased, after 2 days of conflict and roughly 18 hours of actual combat, 24,000 men were either dead or wounded. That's one casualty every time you and I take a breath. Let that sink in. Now, the Battle of Shiloh was named after a small church that stood nearby where the fighting took place. In Hebrew, Shiloh means place of peace. Sobering irony, isn't it? See, on that Sunday morning when the battle began, the church that would normally echo with the sound of praise and worship was dulled by the rebel yell of the Confederacy and the screams of teenage boys meeting gunfire for the first time. The whispers of silent prayer replaced with the agonizing sound of soldiers holding their dying comrades. The grassy fields where children would run and play, painted red with the blood of boys who had never before left their hometown. And there stood Shiloh, a symbol of peace in the midst of complete and utter chaos. Now let's backtrack a few centuries, roughly to the year 33 AD. Inside the walls of Jerusalem, the man they called Jesus is welcomed into the city by the sound of joyful praise. He parades through the streets like a king returning from a victorious campaign, his smile reflecting off of each face in the crowd. But only days later, that same smile would fade into a cold and weary gaze. The sound of waving palm branches dampened by the crack of the Roman whip. The cheers of 1,000 people nowhere to be heard during the trial of the Sanhedrin. And the words, "Hosanna, Hosanna," replaced with the screams of judgment authored by his own countrymen. "Crucify him, crucify him." And as the innocent Christ suffered on that cross at Calvary, the crowds looked on, cursed, and laughed at what would be the image of their own redemption. Jesus, the true manifestation of hope, love, and peace, dying in the midst of complete and utter chaos. And even though the light of day is difficult to see through the billowing smoke, and the trumpet of victory cannot yet be heard over the cannon fire, hope is coming, hope is rising, hope is with us. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace.